One moment, Lauren Hayes moved with practiced calm through the controlled bedlam of the Austin Central Emergency Room, her focus entirely on saving a critical patient's life. The next, she stood stunned on the sidewalk outside the hospital, her job gone, dismissed abruptly for acting outside of rigid hospital guidelines. Her years of dedicated nursing, her professional identity, felt suddenly contained within the flimsy cardboard box she held. The sting of injustice was sharp, bewildering. Then, just as the raw shock began to wash over her in the quiet afternoon heat, something utterly unbelievable unfolded on the street before her modest apartment building. 8 gleaming, identical black luxury sedans appeared, rolling smoothly down the road, forming a silent, imposing, almost surreal line right there in her ordinary neighborhood parking lot. Have you ever been caught in that impossible position, forced to choose between following a strict rule and doing what your conscience, your experience, your very being screamed was the right thing to do? What truly is the cost of maintaining your integrity when you work within systems that seem designed to prioritize procedures over people, paperwork over patients? Can saving someone's life actually cost you everything you've worked for? Lauren Hayes didn't just work as a nurse. She lived for it. It was more than her profession. It felt like her true calling. Inside the demanding environment of Austin Central Medical Center, her sharp clinical mind and deep wells of genuine empathy were recognized by colleagues and felt by patients. She navigated the intense pace, not just with competence, but with a deeply held commitment to alleviating suffering. A promise she felt she made anew with every person she treated. Her dedication was grounded in the simple belief that every single life mattered, a belief that sometimes felt pushed aside by the hospital's growing emphasis on impersonal metrics and rules. Overseeing much of this shift was Administrator Mark Caldwell, a man whose attention seemed fixed more on spreadsheets and potential blame than on the complex human needs within his hospital walls. Lauren had found herself disagreeing with him before, small instances where she advocated strongly for a patient's needs against the grain of policy. His approach represented a direction she found deeply unsettling, a move away from care centered on people towards one governed by defensible actions. This underlying friction set the stage for a single, critical decision that would irrevocably alter her path. How could one split-second, life-saving judgment call lead directly to Lauren losing her career? What conceivable explanation could there be for those 8 mysterious, out-of-place luxury cars appearing at her door? And was it possible that this completely unexpected, bizarre event could somehow transform professional ruin and profound injustice into an entirely new, unforeseen beginning? Keep watching as we share Lauren Hayes' remarkable story. And if you believe that standing strong for what's right truly matters, especially when facing difficult obstacles and personal cost, please subscribe to Remarkable Stories. You'll definitely want to see how this situation resolves. For Lauren Hayes, nursing was never about just checking boxes or following steps by rote. It was a deep-seated commitment, a promise she felt she renewed with every patient who came through the doors of Austin Central's emergency department. She truly believed in the inherent value of every single life she touched, a principle that felt increasingly out of step with the hospital's growing administrative demands. In her late 30s, Lauren moved through the often intense ER environment with a calmness born of deep knowledge and genuine compassion. Her eyes held both sharp intelligence and a profound capacity for empathy. Colleagues knew her as exceptionally skilled, someone who saw the person behind the chart, the fear behind the symptoms. She found satisfaction in the challenging pace, in making a real difference during moments of crisis. Her life away from the hospital offered a necessary quiet contrast. She lived in a modest, older apartment building in South Austin, its simple brick front a world away from the city's newer, shinier developments. To decompress after long shifts, filled with urgent voices and blaring monitors, she often sought refuge along the Barton Creek Greenbelt, walking beneath the trees, the quiet rustling of leaves, a soothing counterpoint to the hospital's noise. Austin was her home, a place whose own complexities seemed to mirror the difficulties and rewards she found in her chosen work. But lately, a definite tension had begun to spread through the hospital corridors, thick and unspoken. Memos appeared more often, reminding staff about the critical need for strict procedural compliance, often citing risk reduction or performance measurements. Behind these directives, whispers about potential budget cuts affecting nurse staffing levels added a layer of worry to an already demanding job. The person frequently associated with this changing atmosphere was Administrator Mark Caldwell. His attention appeared firmly directed at balance sheets, operating costs, and potential legal exposures, rather than the messy, unpredictable human element of caring for the sick and injured. Lauren had encountered friction with Caldwell's approach before. There had been instances, minor skirmishes perhaps, where she had pushed back, advocating maybe a bit too strongly for a patient's comfort against standard procedure, or questioning a discharge order she felt was rushed. Caldwell represented a change Lauren found deeply troubling, a shift toward impersonal, system-first healthcare, where choices were increasingly judged not by their benefit to the patient, but by how easily they could be defended on paper. You could feel the pressure building, the sense that Lauren's deep-seated patient-first principles were on an unavoidable collision course with the administration's tightening grip on rules and risk management. The familiar controlled intensity of the Austin Central ER shattered into genuine urgency one sweltering Texas afternoon. Paramedics rushed through the automatic doors, their voices sharp with concern, guiding a gurney carrying a middle-aged man, his face pale and distressed, clutching his chest. His name was Alistair Finch. Lauren met them immediately, her mind clicking into high gear, rapidly assessing the critical situation. Initial readings placed him as a high-priority cardiac case. His vital signs were worryingly unstable, oxygen levels dropping fast. The practiced ER team moved quickly, attaching monitors, getting IV lines started, trying to stabilize him. But then, Mr. Finch gasped sharply, his eyes rolling back. Cardiac arrest. "Code Blue!" Lauren's voice cut sharply through the surrounding activity. The team responded instantly, falling into their trained roles, beginning chest compressions, preparing the defibrillator. It was a sequence they knew well. Yet Lauren felt a growing unease. Something wasn't right. The standard advanced life support procedures dictated specific actions, certain medicines given in a precise sequence. Anything outside that required explicit direction from the attending physician, Dr. Ramirez. But Dr. Ramirez was completely occupied in the adjacent bay, deeply involved in stabilizing victims from a serious multi-car accident. Seconds felt agonizingly long. Lauren watched the monitor, her extensive experience and comprehensive reading of Mr. Finch's condition, telling her the standard approach wasn't working. He wasn't responding as he should. He was slipping away before their eyes. A specific intervention flashed in her mind, a medication protocol occasionally used in difficult cases like this, when standard treatments failed. But it was considered off-label for this exact scenario without a cardiologist's input or a direct order from the attending doctor. Critically, it wasn't covered by any standing orders that allowed nurses to administer it independently in this situation. Giving it without that immediate, direct physician's order would be a clear breach of strict hospital policy, possibly pushing past her defined scope of practice for this specific circumstance. Doubt warred with clinical certainty. She could almost see Administrator Caldwell's face, hear his previous warnings about sticking rigidly to the rules. The potential professional consequences were stark. But then, her gaze fell on Mr. Finch, on the fading signs of life. In that instant, the core ethical duty of a nurse, the fundamental need to act for the patient's well-being, surged powerfully past her fear of breaking the rules. "Charging to 200!" she called out. The machine whined. "Clear!" The jolt went through Mr. Finch's body. No response. They tried again. Still nothing. Making the split-second decision that felt both necessary and terrifying, Lauren reached for the specific medication vial. Her hands were steady as she calculated the correct dose and administered it through the IV line. Quiet murmurs passed through the other team members. Questioning looks were exchanged. Lauren met their eyes, her voice steady and firm over the sounds of the code. "His pressure wasn't responding, rhythm degrading," she stated clearly. "We needed to try something else." The air was thick with tension. Then moments later, a flicker appeared on the heart monitor. Faint, unsteady, but definitely there. A pulse. A collective breath was held. Mr. Finch's skin tone began to improve. Just a fraction, but noticeably. Right at that moment, Dr. Ramirez hurried over, ready to take command of the ongoing resuscitation. A wave of powerful relief washed over Lauren, almost making her dizzy. It was immediately followed, however, by a cold, heavy dread settling in her stomach. She had acted. She had saved a life. And she had unquestionably broken a cardinal rule of the hospital. The consequences were yet to come. The summons came the next morning. Lauren was called to Administrator Mark Caldwell's office. Stepping inside felt like entering a vacuum. The air was cool, impersonal, the furniture functional but without warmth, a space that perfectly mirrored the man himself. Caldwell wasted no time on preliminaries. Before him lay the incident report from the previous day, key sections marked with aggressive highlights. Lauren took a breath and calmly, methodically, explained her actions from her perspective. She detailed the critical time pressure, Mr. Finch's failure to respond to the standard measures, the attending physician's unavailability during those crucial moments, and the stark life-or-death judgment call she was forced to make. She spoke clearly about her fundamental duty as a nurse, her role as a patient advocate, the very core of nursing ethics she believed in, the unwavering commitment to the patient's immediate needs. Caldwell listened without a flicker of expression, his face an impassive mask, his fingers steepled precisely before him. When Lauren concluded, he didn't engage with her points about patient safety or ethical duty. Instead, he dismissed her entire rationale with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Ms. Hayes," he began, his voice clipped, sharp-edged, "let me be perfectly clear. Your primary duty in this medical center is to follow the established, approved procedures without deviation, and to operate strictly within the scope of practice defined by this medical center and by state regulations." He leaned forward slightly, his voice hardening. "Perhaps you fail to appreciate the immense pressure this hospital operates under. We settled a multi-million-dollar lawsuit just last year precisely because a clinician thought outside the box during a critical event. My responsibility is to protect this entire medical center, its funding, its staff, its future ability to serve all patients, and that demands unwavering adherence to tested procedures that minimize risk. Your independent actions yesterday, regardless of your stated intentions, exposed this hospital to an unacceptable level of liability. You administered a non-standard medication without a direct, simultaneous physician order, in a circumstance where no standing order permitted such action. That constitutes an unambiguous, serious violation of hospital policy." He continued, his words hammering home the institutional perspective, the potential for costly legal action, the critical importance of standardized care for managing risk, the damage such deviations could inflict. He may have even subtly alluded to her previous difficulties in strictly following policy, effectively framing her life-saving intervention not as heroic,
but as dangerously insubordinate behavior from a problematic employee.
The hospital saw a liability risk that needed immediate containment. Lauren saw a human life that she had managed to save against the odds. Where do you draw the line between rigid policy and human principle, especially when seconds count? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The verdict was delivered with swift, cold finality. There was no further discussion, no review board, no consideration of the positive outcome for Mr. Finch. Just the stark, brutal efficiency of termination. Effective immediately. Moments later, Lauren found herself numbly packing her few personal belongings from her locker into a plain cardboard box. A security guard then escorted her from the premises. Walking through the familiar hospital corridors, past faces she had worked alongside, felt profoundly surreal and deeply humiliating, like a public shaming. She saw colleagues quickly avert their gaze, pretending to be busy, their discomfort palpable. The initial numbness of shock began to recede, replaced by a wave of heat, anger, and a burning sense of profound injustice. It was the bitter irony of her profession staring her in the face. Punished severely for acting on the very principles of patient care she had sworn to uphold. Yet, even as the weight of losing her job, her career, began to press down on her, a solid core of certainty remained unshaken within her. She had made a difficult choice in a critical moment, and because of that choice, Mr. Finch was alive. Whatever the cost, she knew she had done the right thing. The weeks immediately following Lauren's abrupt dismissal dissolved into a disorienting haze of anxiety and profound uncertainty. The dismissal itself felt like an indelible mark, a brand that made her subsequent search for a new nursing position incredibly difficult. She diligently sent out applications, made calls, but the official reason listed, protocol violation, seemed to hang heavy in the air. She could almost hear the unspoken subtext, translating it to potential employers as insubordination, or worse, liability risk. Doors that might have previously opened remained firmly shut. Polite but firm rejections mounted. Adding to the professional stress were the relentless pressures of everyday finances. Rent deadlines approached with unnerving speed. Bills accumulated, and the cushion she thought she had felt terrifyingly thin. Compounding all this was a deep, aching sense of betrayal by the medical center she had poured years of her life and dedication into. It felt like being cast adrift, and the isolation was sharp, a keen loneliness often experienced by those who find themselves pushing against the grain of established systems. Yet Lauren Hayes possessed a resilience that wouldn't allow her to simply crumble under the weight of it all. Her core identity as a caregiver, her unwavering commitment to the principles of nursing, remained fundamentally intact, untouched by Caldwell's actions or the hospital's rejection. She refused to be defined solely by her termination. Instead of passively waiting for circumstances to change, she took action to reaffirm her purpose. She sought out volunteer work at a small, under-resourced community clinic located in a less affluent neighborhood of Austin. There, offering comfort, providing basic health advice, and using her skills to help people who often had nowhere else to turn, she reconnected with the essential reasons she had chosen nursing. Seeing the direct positive effect of her care, even unpaid, helped to anchor her spirit and push back against the encroaching despair. Beyond the vital hands-on work at the clinic, Lauren channeled her swirling emotions, the anger, the frustration, the sense of injustice, into a proactive quest for understanding. She became a regular fixture at the Austin Public Library, spending countless hours delving into books and journals. She researched the complex field of nursing ethics, explored the history and function of patient advocacy organizations, and tried to grasp the intricate interplay between hospital policies, ever-present legal pressures, and the resulting impact on patient care and outcomes. She read accounts of other nurses, other medical professionals who had faced severe retaliation for speaking out against unsafe practices or for prioritizing their ethical duties over restrictive rules. Learning their stories, understanding the immense challenges they encountered, didn't magically erase her own hardship, but it combated the isolation. It showed her she wasn't alone in this kind of struggle. This dedicated research became a way for her to transform raw emotion into focused understanding, reinforcing her determination. She resolved fiercely that she would not let Administrator Caldwell or the impersonal system he represented extinguish her spirit or plant a seed of regret for her decision to save Mr. Finch's life. Despite the crushing weight of her current reality, the lost career, the mounting bills, the professional ostracization, that one fact remained her unshakable truth. A man was alive because she chose to act. It happened late one Tuesday afternoon, shattering the usual sleepy rhythm of Lauren's quiet apartment complex. She was sitting inside, staring blankly at yet another online job rejection notice, when a low, powerful hum began from outside, growing steadily louder, demanding attention. Lauren glanced out her window, initially distracted, then blinked, trying to process what she was seeing. An actual procession of vehicles, sleek and deeply black, was gliding down her residential street, turning with unnatural smoothness into the complex's parking lot. Not just one or two cars, but 8 identical luxury sedans, their windows tinted to an opaque black chrome, catching the afternoon light. They parked with silent, coordinated precision, forming an imposing, unbroken line that effectively blocked half the lot. Their engines remained running, a low, unified thrum vibrating faintly through the pavement. The effect was immediate and jarring. Neighbors started peeking through blinds. Curtains twitched up and down the building facades. A group of kids who had been playing kickball nearby fell silent, simply staring, mesmerized by this utterly incongruous display of wealth and power, dropped into their ordinary world. Lauren's own heart began to hammer against her ribs. What was this? Could it be Caldwell? Was this some kind of bizarre intimidation tactic? A cease and desist order being delivered with absurd, over-the-top theatricality. The sheer spectacle felt baffling, confusing, and carried an undercurrent of menace precisely because it was so wildly out of place against the backdrop of her current life and struggles. The cars just sat there, offering no explanation, like silent black sentinels, their presence only magnifying the sense of bewildered, anxious anticipation that hung heavy in the air. After what felt like an eternity, the door of the lead car finally opened. A uniformed chauffeur stepped out, moving with professional reserve to the rear passenger door. He opened it, and a woman emerged. She appeared to be in her early 60s, dressed impeccably in an elegant, understated linen suit, her silver hair perfectly styled. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, her posture radiating a natural authority that seemed entirely separate from the ostentatious arrival of the vehicles. Her sharp, intelligent eyes scanned the building numbers briefly before settling on Lauren's apartment unit. Ignoring the curious onlookers who were now openly watching, she began walking towards Lauren's door with measured, unhurried steps. Lauren watched her approach through the peephole, her confusion warring with a strange, rising sense of inevitability. The woman stopped directly outside Lauren's door and raised a hand, knocking softly. Lauren hesitated for only a second before opening the door just a crack, her mind racing. "Ms. Lauren Hayes?" the woman inquired, her voice calm, cultured, and steady. "Yes," Lauren managed to reply. The woman met her gaze directly. "My name is Vivian Sterling," she stated simply. "I believe you recently provided care for my brother, Alistair Finch." The name, Alistair Finch, hit Lauren with the force of a physical blow. The man she saved. the patient whose life cost her job. The connection snapped into place instantly, sharp and clear. But the purpose behind this extraordinary visit, heralded by 8 luxury cars, remained completely shrouded in mystery. 8 luxury cars and the sister of the man she saved. What could possibly be happening? Drop your wildest guesses in the comments before we reveal the twist. Lauren hesitated only for a brief second, the name Alistair Finch still echoing in the small space between them, before opening her apartment door wider. "Please, come in," she managed, stepping back. Vivian Sterling entered, her gaze taking in the small, tidy living area with a polite, neutral expression before turning back to Lauren. "Thank you, Ms. Hayes," she said, her voice softening slightly. "I won't impose on you for long." She met Lauren's eyes directly. "My brother Alistair is recovering now. He owes his life to your quick thinking and decisive action in the ER. He told me what happened." Vivian paused for emphasis. "He also told me about the consequences you faced because of your choice. I have since confirmed the details of your dismissal." Lauren braced herself, unsure what to expect. Was this sympathy? An offer of financial compensation, perhaps? A request for testimony? "Alistair," Ms. Sterling continued, her tone shifting, becoming more focused, "wasn't just any patient needing emergency care that day. And my visit here isn't simply about expressing our family's profound gratitude, although please know, we are truly, deeply grateful." She let her words settle in the quiet room. "For a number of years now, I've been directing a private foundation, the Sterling Initiative for Ethical Healthcare. Our core mission is twofold: to advocate strongly for patient safety standards and, critically, to support medical professionals who find themselves penalized for prioritizing ethical patient care, often when facing significant opposition from the systems they work within." Lauren listened, stunned into absolute silence, trying to process this completely unexpected information. "My brother Alistair," Miss Sterling revealed, leaning forward slightly, "was in fact already doing some related work for our foundation just before his incident. He'd been exploring the significant challenges frontline medical staff often face, trying to balance direct patient needs with increasing administrative pressures and rigid procedural demands. His work involved understanding how we could better support genuine patient advocacy efforts within large, complex medical systems." Vivian held Lauren's gaze. "Your experience, Ms. Hayes, tragically highlights the exact kind of difficult ethical dilemmas and intense systemic pressures his research was examining. It's a powerful, real-world example of the very problems we are working to address." This framing felt less like pure coincidence. More like Lauren's ordeal was a stark illustration relevant to the Foundation's broader concerns. "We hear these stories far too often," Ms. Sterling said, her voice now laced with a quiet intensity. "Stories of dedicated nurses, skilled doctors, facing professional retaliation, sometimes losing their careers entirely, simply for doing what they believed was ethically right for their patient in a critical moment. They often feel completely isolated, powerless against large medical centers and their legal defenses." She looked directly at Lauren again, her gaze steady and purposeful. "Because of this, the Sterling Initiative is launching a significant new program specifically designed to combat this problem head-on. We intend to provide comprehensive legal support, professional advocacy services, and substantial resources for healthcare workers who have been unfairly penalized for upholding their ethical duties over blindly following restrictive or outdated protocols. We want to challenge the systems that force dedicated professionals into these impossible choices." Then came the most staggering part. "And, Ms. Hayes," Vivian Sterling stated clearly, "we want you to help lead this new program." The offer hung in the air, immense in its implications. A job, Not just any job, but a position born directly from her own traumatic experience. A chance to fight back against the very system that had wronged her. An opportunity to help countless others navigate the treacherous path she had just been forced to walk. It was vindication, opportunity, and a renewed sense of purpose, all delivered to her modest doorstep by this unexpected messenger. Ms. Sterling allowed a faint smile to touch her lips. "The cars," she added, acknowledging the still idling spectacle outside, "were perhaps a bit dramatic." That was Alistair's insistence, actually. He wanted the administration at Austin Central, should they happen to notice, to understand very clearly that you are no longer standing alone. The absurdity of the arrival suddenly clicked into place, transforming from baffling mystery into a clear statement of support and influence. Tears welled in Lauren's eyes then, not tears of despair or frustration this time, but tears of overwhelming relief, of a sudden, dawning, almost unbelievable hope. The consequences of that single critical moment in the ER, that difficult ethical choice she made, had spread further and in more astonishing ways than she could ever have conceived. Her resilience had seen her through the darkest weeks, and now, this unforeseen encounter promised not just a new direction, but a chance to channel her painful ordeal into a powerful force for positive change. Her integrity, though it came at a high personal cost, had ultimately opened a door to making a difference on a scale she'd never imagined. Lauren's incredible journey shows that standing by your principles, even at great cost, can ripple outwards in ways we can't imagine. If her story of courage and vindication moved you, please give this video a like, subscribe to Remarkable Stories for more inspirational tales, and share this message of hope. Thank you for watching.